Right. And yeah,
Stacy, can I ask you a question? It seems unusual to me that there wouldn't be any other people in here. Could there be something with the two different links?
Well, there are 3 attendees, so I know folks are
Oh,
getting
okay.
in.
Oh, I see the participants down there. Okay, excuse me.
So when people, the ACLU likes to have people register for our webinars and log in. And so everybody sort of got a unique login based on their, their registration. So as of this morning, we had like 20 people who had registered, but maybe they thought they would just watch the recording of it. So I'm going to record it and I'll post it on the ACLU Facebook page, and we'll send it out to our membership. And man, I sure hope my internet cooperates with me here. Am I super glitchy right now?
A little glitchy, not super glitchy. It's also Yom Kippur, so I don't know if
that is true. Yeah.
Part of it.
Yeah, that might be part of it. So let's see. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna sort of I mean, I know I've touched base with Justin and Shabra and Joy and Fred about some of the sort of rules and procedural stuff, but I'll let our attendees also know kind of our order of operations here. So I guess I want to start by saying that the point of this webinar is to help our voters be informed voters. The ACLU believes that voting is a fundamental right. We believe it's the cornerstone of the American government, and that our democracy works best when all voices are represented. We believe that when voters turn out for federal, state, and local elections, we can hold our politicians accountable and make critical decisions about where our tax dollars get spent and what we want for our communities. And so, we believe that everybody should vote like our rights depend on it, because they do. As of the last election in June, there are almost 21 million registered voters in California, but only 7.2 million people cast a ballot in the June election, which means that only 33.3% of registered voters participated in that election, which means that we have a lot of work to do. We want to get these numbers up in November. We believe we all have a role to play. And so the point of this webinar is, to increase people's level of knowledge about the races that are going on. And we are not here to make an endorsement. And so all the candidates know that that is the case, that the ACLU will not be making an endorsement, but that we wanted ACLU membership and people who care about civil liberties, which I hope is everybody, to hear how the candidates feel about the issues that matter to hopefully all of us. But specifically, the ACLU of Northern California, the Santa Cruz chapter, is working on 3 particular focus areas: police transparency and accountability, or sheriff transparency and accountability, houselessness, and police reform, or prison reform, or the way that we deal with people who are incarcerated or might be on their way to incarceration. And so the questions that we're asking are relevant to those particular topics. And so the candidates have gotten the questions ahead of time. And generally, I want to give folks about 2 minutes, but since we're sort of a small group, I don't want to cut anybody off. And so it's my intention to, sort of give you a warning as your 2 minutes are drawing to a close, but I'm not going to be that person who shouts at you, time's up, or anything like that. So I also wanted just to kind of point out which races we have represented here. There's actually a number of races on the ballot in November, and I admit we're a little bit focused on both the county supervisor races and the races in the city of Santa Cruz. Obviously, there's other races going on. There's propositions, and there's city council races in Watsonville, and there's educational board of trustees, that kind of thing. And so we wanted to focus on candidates who directly work with our law enforcement agencies, and will play a significant role in the way that those policies are brought forth in the city and in the county. And so I did reach out to the candidates running in both District 3 and District 4 supervisorial races. I assume that folks who are here know what county district they're in, but just in case you don't, here is a map of the districts, the county districts, and so District 3 is most of Santa Cruz proper, and then a lot of the North Coast and Bonnie Doon. And District 4 is most of Watsonville. And so both District 3 and District 4 are up for election, and we have represented tonight the candidates from the District 3 supervisorial race, Justin Cummings and Shebra Kalantari Johnson. I did reach out to both of the candidates in District 4, and they were hard to get a hold of, so they are not here. And then for folks who are paying attention to the city council races, you might know that we have gone to district elections, and so there are 6. Oops, that's not the one I wanted. Oh, come on, balls. You guys, I ran Zoom school for like a whole year. You'd think I'd be a super pro at this. So in the city of Santa Cruz, we will have 6 districts. And then the 7th city council member will be elected at large and will play the role of mayor. And so this year in the city of Santa Cruz, we're electing our first mayor. That's exciting. And then the other 2 districts that are up for election are District 6. So the far west side, all the way from the ocean up to the top of campus, and District 4, which is this downtown district. And then obviously our mayor. And so represented tonight are the 2 mayoral candidates, Joy Schendeldecker and Fred Keeley. And I reached out to folks who are running in District 6 and District 4 as well. Both of the candidates in District 6 preferred to participate in writing. Mostly it's a Yom Kippur conflict, and I apologize for that. And so they will be sharing their answers in writing, and I will share their answers with our ACLU membership, and also via the ACLU Facebook page, where I'll also be posting the recording of this webinar tonight. And then in District 4, we had 1 person who was interested in participating and 2 people who either declined or did not get back to me. And so there was some debate about, the ACLU, we're nonpartisan, we don't want to be seen as electioneering. And so ultimately the decision was made that if people were given the opportunity to participate in writing, that they would be able to do that, and that their opinions in writing would be also shared with our membership, whether other members or whether other candidates in that district participated in writing or not. So I have confirmation that at least 1 of the District 4 candidates will be participating in writing, and I will share those answers in the same way that I'm sharing the District 6 answers and this recording. So can I send a participant link? Shebra, I'm not sure if I can, because again, when people sign, like when they register, they get a unique link. So I never actually got one because the ACLU was sort of generating those.
I think we're good.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to start with our District 3 supervisorial candidates, and then we'll move on to candidates for mayor. And I'm also inviting District 3 supervisorial candidates to leave us once they have answered the questions. So Joy and Fred, you get to hang out, make yourselves comfortable, and we'll be with you momentarily. So like I said a few minutes ago, I'm going to time folks, but I'm not going to be, really like the time whatever, I'm not gonna like, time's up. I'm just gonna let you talk if you need to. Though if you could try to keep it to 2 minutes, that would be great. And so I wanted folks just to begin with introducing themselves, kind of telling us a little bit about, who they are generally, and so any sort of introductory comments that you want to make. And I randomly am choosing Justin to start.
All right. Well, thank you, Stacy, for setting this up on behalf of the ACLU, and thank you all for having us. My name is Justin Cummings. I'm a renter, environmental scientist with a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology from UCSC, and over 20 years of experience working in the environmental sciences field. I'm also an educator, fluent Spanish speaker with a bachelor's in Spanish. I'm a member of the UAW Local 5810 Union. I'm a current Santa Cruz City Council member and was mayor of Santa Cruz in 2020 during one of the most challenging years in our recent lived history. I grew up in a family where my father was an attorney on the first African-American mayor of Chicago's administration on the law board. And my mother was a nutritionist in Chicago. She worked for Cook County, later for the University of Illinois Extension, where she primarily worked in low-income African-American and POC neighborhoods, teaching nutrition. And this year, as I conclude my term on the city council, I've decided to run for the seat of 3rd District County Supervisor. Since 2015, I've worked here in Santa Cruz on diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. I've created 2 nonprofits, the first of which was focused on increasing diversity in the field of environmental conservation. The second of which was focused on increasing diversity in tech around the use and application of drones. And I've served on the city council again since 2018, where I've also sat in the capacity of vice mayor, mayor, and council member. As mayor of Santa Cruz, we were in a tremendously difficult time where we dealt with the onset of COVID, social unrest after the murder of George Floyd, and the CZU fires. And one of the things that I took as a priority was really focusing on many of the social justice issues related to the murder of George Floyd and the treatment of Black and brown people in our community by law enforcement. Working with the ACLU and with members of our Black community and other community members, we looked at addressing numerous policies related to use of force in our community and policing. We made 26 changes to police policy. We worked with members at the county and were able to compare our policies regionally. And as a county supervisor, I want to continue this work so that we can improve our criminal justice system and law enforcement in our community. Thank you.
Great. So Shebra, 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Stacy, for moderating. My name is Shebra Kalantari Johnson. I am an immigrant from Iran. I came here to the United States when I was 8 years old, and I've had the fortune to call Santa Cruz my home for over 2 decades. I have a bachelor's in psychology and French from UCSC and a master's in social work with an emphasis in public policy and mental health from San Jose State. I'm not going to give you my whole CV, but I do want to center my comments on 3 core values: equity, well-being, diversity, and inclusion, how I've implemented these over the last 2 decades here in our community, and what I'll bring as your supervisor. So equity, as your supervisor, I'll work on equity through increased resources for public health needs, creating more responsive mental health and behavioral health care in our county. And I've done this before professionally. I brought in over $40 million over the last 17 years. And these dollars help address issues that contribute to inequities: immigration rights, homelessness, mental health, criminal justice reform. Well-being, 34% of our county's population are under the age of 25. As your supervisor, I will partner across our systems: education, juvenile justice, child welfare, parks, to ensure that young people in this community have an environment where the healthy choice is the easy choice. And I've done this before. I've helped bring forward policies that would decrease youth access to substances. And through this work, our county saw a 10% decrease in underage binge drinking in 2 short years. As a council member, I brought forward the Children and Youth Bill of Rights and supported the Children's Fund. Diversity and inclusion. As your supervisor, I'll advocate for affordable housing, push for public transit and safe, active transportation, and work with our Women's Commission to develop an Office of Women's Policy to ensure that women's rights are at the forefront of our decision making. And I've done this work before. I've worked on immigration rights and have brought in millions of dollars to help DACA students. As a council member, I voted for affordable housing, and I co-authored an actionable racial equity resolution and brought forward resolutions to confirm our commitment to reproductive rights and women's rights. I'm qualified to serve in this important role, and I know I would serve it well. Thanks for the opportunity tonight.
Great, that was almost exactly 2 minutes. Fabulous. Okay, first question, and so I'm just choosing who goes first. I'm flipping a coin. So my first question, and I'll drop it in the chat. Can I message everyone? Okay, so everybody can see it. 2 minutes. Oh wait, sorry, that was the mayor question. Ignore that, everybody. I got this. Try that again. Okay, so this is the first question for County Board of Supervisor candidates. 2 minutes to answer this question. The 2021 grand jury report found, quote, a number of events in our local jail over the past 4 years illustrate that we have a problem. These events include inmate deaths, violence and equipment failures at the main jail, and criminal conduct, including sexual assaults by correction officers, end quote. What steps would you take on the Board of Supervisors to address the concerns of the grand jury? What are your views on public disclosure regarding how much money the county has spent on lawsuits related to conditions and injuries at the jail in the last 10 years? So big question, 2 minutes. I'm flipping a coin. And I'm gonna go with Shebra first. So I'm holding up the timer like at 1 minute. Does that make sense to folks?
Yeah, that's great.
Great.
All right, yeah, big question. I am in support of public disclosure of funds spent on lawsuits as related to the issues brought up in the grand jury report. One of the challenges here is that our jails are the landing place for individuals with serious mental illness. The grand jury report itself indicates that our jails have become the de facto mental health and substance abuse treatment facilities. We know our county doesn't have sufficient facilities, and essentially we treat seriously mentally ill individuals in our jail. I witnessed this firsthand. As a MSW intern, I worked with the crisis intervention team in our county jail. So I got to see where the challenges are. It was a while ago, but I got to see it. The passage of AB 8109 also impacted our local jails, where now inmates are there for years waiting trial. They can serve up to 4 years, and county jails are now the placeholders for where folks were in state prisons. So the responsibility over and over again, the responsibility has fallen on local communities without the resources or funding. So I think one of the first things to do is to secure resources for safe and treatment-focused spaces for these individuals. Institutions were not the right place, jails aren't the right place, but we don't have the right place. And frankly, I'll talk about it in our next question, but they end up on the streets. We need to update our policies and have sufficient personnel. And I bring this lens because as a grant writer, these are the issues I've worked on. Most recently, I authored the $6 million grant that our community got, the Prop 47 grant, in partnership with probation, DA, public defenders, courts, and nonprofits. And essentially what this does is divert individuals with mental health and substance abuse challenges from the criminal justice system. I wrote the grant 3 years ago successfully. We saw outcomes such as reduced recidivism, increased public safety, and local jobs created. So we were awarded, again, this grant. So I think more upstream efforts like this is what I would bring as a supervisor.
Okay, and to you, Justin. Do you want me to ask it again?
Sure. Just for, I mean, I guess it might be helpful for the recording and people who are trying
The 2021 grand jury report found that, quote, a number of events in our local jail over the past 4 years illustrates that we have a problem. These events include inmate deaths, violence and equipment failures at the main jail, and criminal conduct, including sexual assaults by corrections officers, end quote. What steps would you take on the Board of Supervisors to address the concerns of the grand jury? What are your views on public disclosure regarding how much money the county has spent on lawsuits related to conditions and injury at the jail in the last 10 years?
Yeah, well, I think at the forefront of this question is transparency. And that's something that I've been very much pushing as a city council member, and that I would push as a county supervisor, because, you know, it's our public tax dollars that are going to pay for these, that are paying for these facilities. And we need to understand what's going on behind the doors of our jails, where, you know, people are supposed to be, you know, whether they're detained or whether they're waiting trial, what have you, but these are supposed to be places where people will be kept safe while they're awaiting the outcome of their trials. And to hear about the deaths and the violence that's been happening is very troubling. I think one of the big issues too, along with that, is that, you know, millions of tax dollars are being spent on, you know, the fact that people have experienced violence within the jails and these places where they're supposed to be kept safe. And as a result, you know, we, the people, are now having to pay for, you know, a lack of, I wouldn't want to say enforcement, but just oversight of the people who are supposed to be keeping these people safe. And so I do think that we need to have more transparency. I think we need to have a better sense of what the conditions are within these jails, because I don't think a lot of people in our community know that. And I think we need to, you know, invest in alternative forms, especially for people who are experiencing mental health issues. As a city council member, as mayor, I've on multiple occasions reached out to Jimmy Panetta's office to ask if there's an opportunity for us to push for more beds for mental health and to reform some of the federal laws that prevent us from using Medicaid funds to actually have more substance treatment beds. We know that many people in our jails are experiencing mental health issues, and that's not a place for them. Tamario Smith was one of the people who was at Santa Cruz, in one of the Santa Cruz County jails, who had mental health issues and ended up dying because he drank too much water and killed himself. Like, these are situations where we need to make sure that people who end up in our criminal justice system not only have the right to a fair and speedy trial, but also are going to be protected when they're within our custody. And as county supervisor, I will work to ensure that people within our community who end up in our criminal justice system are kept safe and are, you know, able to be protected and feel safe in our community, and that our community is confident that we're not going to be treating people badly to the point where, you know, we're going to get sued and have to pay millions of dollars in restitution to these families.
All right, question two. Question two, also 2 minutes, but again, you know, I'll let you know when 2 minutes are up, but if you have a thought you want to finish, I'm going to go ahead and let you finish it. What are your policy priorities when it comes to protecting the rights of unhoused people and ensuring that they are not penalized for engaging in the necessary functions of living or sleeping outside, at least until there are enough shelter beds and safe parking spaces for all people who are unhoused? I'm going to flip my coin to see who goes first. Deborah again.
The coin rigged or what? I'm just kidding. All right, in 2 minutes. So what we've been doing has not been working. I think we can all agree on that. No one should be living in the conditions that they're living in outdoors, in these unmanaged encampments, and the surrounding neighbors shouldn't have to endure the negative health and safety impacts. I think it's absolutely essential to work upstream, to work on prevention, to reduce homelessness. It's absolutely essential to implement best practice strategies such as housing first. And we have to deal with the crisis at hand, which is street homelessness, which is very much connected to the last question around mental health and unmet behavioral health and mental health needs. So one priority is to increase our treatment options and have actual facilities in our community. On the city council, I know this is contentious. On the city council, I have pushed to end large unmanaged encampments while insisting on safe shelter and safe parking programs. And in the last 8 months, we've stood up managed sheltered programs that have temporarily housed 150 people. A dozen of those people, including children, have been placed in permanent housing. And it's because of these shelters that are connected to case management and housing navigation. We've stood up a 3-tiered safe parking program that has 25 to 30 vehicles across all three of these tiers. So the first time our city is committing to that, not because the state has mandated it, but our city is committing to that. It's not enough. What the city is doing is not enough. And this is what I've been working on as a council member with the supervisors. And as a supervisor, I'm committed to making sure we have transitional shelter and we have safe parking programs and we increase our behavioral health resources. I do want to just say one thing, that there's hope. Youth homelessness. In 2018, I successfully secured a federal grant that opened up the door for a lot of other state and federal grants, bringing in millions of dollars. I led a year-long strategic planning effort, co-led it with youth with lived experience. Okay, really quickly, 30% in 2019, 30% of our homeless count were youth and young adults. Our recent PIT count showed a 61% decrease. So there's hope, and there's a lot of work to be done.
All right, I'm going to read the question again. I'm not starting Microsoft Word. Come on, Falls, what are you doing? Okay. So the question again for Justin, 2 minutes. What are your policy priorities when it comes to protecting the rights of unhoused people and ensuring that they are not penalized for engaging in the necessary functions of living or sleeping outside, at least until there are enough shelter beds and safe parking spaces for all people who are unhoused? 2 minutes.
Great. Well, one of the things I want to start with on that question, because this is something I care deeply about, is that when I was mayor of Santa Cruz, when COVID-19 hit, we stood up more shelter beds in the city of Santa Cruz than we had ever done in the entire history of the city. As the, before COVID had actually hit us as well, I actually worked with our city staff, our city manager, to set up the Armory and to establish the Armory as a shelter in De La Vega Park. And one of the things one of the approaches that I took at that point was, going out to the community first and talking to them about what we were proposing and hearing their concerns. And as a result of that, up until recently when we were breaking down the benchlands, we had never heard a single complaint from those residents. We'd stood up 1220 River Street, and at the time when I was vice mayor, my first year in office, the Ross camp was a huge issue, and people at the tannery were actually asking us to reopen 1220 River Street. And I say this because when we're able to demonstrate programs that work, we are able to be effective at standing up programs that our community likes and feels that is compatible with their levels of compassion and the needs that we need to address. And as county supervisor, I want to continue to move forward with these efforts of engaging with the community first before we propose, what kinds of programs we're going to instate. We saw the city council take a different approach after my first year in office, where they were trying to push programs onto the community that the community didn't have any input with. One of those was the temporary outdoor living ordinance, which was largely rejected by our entire community because many people hadn't had an opportunity to hear about how that would impact their neighborhoods and what those services would look like. And what was being proposed was putting homeless people in industrial areas when people in our community and on our council didn't know what those industrial areas were. And so I think that as we approach dealing with homelessness, 24/7 mental health crisis response, really engaging with the community to make sure that what we're going to propose is compatible with neighborhoods and our residents.
Great. All right. For question 3, I'm just going to start with Justin. That seems fair, right? Okay. Question 3, again, 2 minutes. What are your views on providing more transparency of the sheriff's internal investigations and handling of external complaints? Do you support establishing a civilian sheriff oversight commission with subpoena power and adequate staffing? So I'm going to put that in the chat again too.
Okay, so should I just start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I've been on the Public Safety Committee for the city of Santa Cruz for 2 years now. I've been on the League of California Cities Public Safety Policy Committee. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I've worked a lot on public safety policy as mayor of Santa Cruz during 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. I firmly believe that we need some external oversight of our law enforcement agencies. Not to say that anybody's doing anything wrong, but I think that, you know, and from the experience that we've had here in the city of Santa Cruz, when we have external auditors, they're able to tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. If people inside the system are the ones who are evaluating themselves, there's a bias that's already there. And by bringing in external people, whether it's members of the community with an oversight board, whether it's an inspector general, bringing these people in, we can actually confirm, are we doing the right thing, and is our agency operating in a way that's effective, that that fits with the values of the community, or are there areas for improvement? And so I don't see this as being you know, the type of board that would you know, just sit and you know, tell our agencies about what they're doing bad. I think it's the important thing for us to be doing is creating checks and balances so we can figure out if there are areas for improvement. Let's go in and figure out, you know, what's the funding that needs to go into place, what policies need to be made, but let's work together to make sure that our law enforcement agencies are the types of agencies that our community can get behind, because we do need public safety at the end of the day. We do need to ensure that our streets and our communities are safe, but we also need to make sure that people who live within our community feel that they are being protected by the people who've been given that power. And we know that, just given what we've been seeing throughout our country with how Black and brown people are treated by law enforcement, that there's less trust. And I think that this type of system will help build trust between our community and law enforcement agencies. So yes, I'm in support.
Okay, I'm going to read the question again. What are your views on providing more transparency of the sheriff's internal investigations and handling of external complaints? Do you support establishing a civilian sheriff oversight commission with subpoena power and adequate staffing? Okay, Shebra, to you.
My colleague and I are very aligned here. Transparency is essential, and one of the ways to get there is through oversight. I understand that there's been a state law that went into effect last year that allows Board of Supervisors to establish either an appointed oversight body or inspector generals with transparency as really the goal of that. So I would be open to that. I'd be open to exploring this. I'd work with the Criminal Justice Council, the Community Corrections Partner, and the Sheriff's Office itself. I want to work with other counties who've implemented these strategies, and of course our own Santa Cruz PD that has an independent auditor framework in place. If it's okay, I want to pivot for the last remaining time I have and bring light to police relationship that's not working and civil liberties that is important to ACLU, and that's what's happening in my home country of Iran. Hundreds of people have died and thousands have been injured and arrested. And I'm bringing this here, and I'm bringing it every platform that I have, because I think it's important that every single one of us acknowledges it and use our platform to bring it to light. The people of Iran are suffering. So I invite you all, I invite everyone who's watching this or who will watch this to please use your forums and your platforms to shed light on the injustices that are taking place in Iran. Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to tell you that was 1 minute, but you still have like 40 seconds if you want to keep going.
Okay. Just please do what you can to shed light on the injustices in Iran. Use your platforms. It's devastating.
Great.
Thank you.
So I hope nobody minds. I've been to a lot of candidate fora, and I always feel like, you know, people get closing statements and they usually are sort of just repetitions of what people said in the opening statements. So I didn't include that in my questions, but I did want to give both Justin and Shebra a chance to, you know, drop their links to their websites in the chat for people who will be watching the recording. You know, you can say like how people can find you and learn more about your campaign. And so, you know, maybe take like a minute just to sort of give a plug for your campaign and how people can connect with you. And I'll start with Justin.
Wait, sorry, I was typing my
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so what we can do to close out is just give a plug for our campaigns.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and how much time do we have?
I'll give you like a minute.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the ACLU for having this forum. And I want to just thank you all for, reaching out during my term in office. We were successful at banning predictive policing and banning facial recognition technology, which allowed us to make national headlines. And I believe that as county supervisor, we have more work to do. If people want to get involved, please visit my website, commingsforsupervisor.com, or reach out to us. We're walking, we're knocking on doors, talking to voters, we're calling folks, all of the above, of trying to get the word out. And really, this is a campaign for the people. And if you look at my website, you can see that in addition to the many former and current elected officials, I've gotten well over 20 to close to 25 community organizations and national endorsements for our campaign, including Planned Parenthood, SEIU, SEIU 521, SEIU, Union Healthcare Workers,
That's a minute.
Monterey Bay Central Labor Council, and many, many more. So please check out our website, and thank you all for having us.
Great. And I just, I think when the panelists put things in the chat, it just goes to other panelists, but I reshared it to make sure that all of the attendees were getting the links and the emails and stuff like that. So Shebrel, I'll give you a minute to also make a plug.
Great. Thank you, Stacy. And thank you, ACLU, for this forum. I have over 2 decades of doing social justice work here in this community. I've produced outcomes, and that's why I'm successful as a grant writer. I've worked on policies from behind the scenes, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to continue to do the work, and I know that I would be able to put my expertise and background to scale as a supervisor. I look forward to working with you all, whatever the entry point, wherever the seat is. I have a wide range of supporters. I won't list them all here. You can see that on my website, which is at shebra.org. And you can reach out to me directly at shebraforsantacruz@gmail.com. I always respond to people, usually within 24 hours. So thanks for the opportunity tonight.
Great. And so it is the eve of Yom Kippur, and you're both in the middle of, no campaigning is just a lot of work and pretty exhausting. So feel free to stick around if you want to. Otherwise, I will invite you to say your farewells, and we'll move on to questions for the mayoral candidates.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right. So, all right. So we're gonna. It's sort of a same sort of. Blah, blah, blah. I got this. Come on. I've been working all day, so I'm gonna try that again. Okay. Same program, introductions, and then 3 questions, and I will put the questions in the chat so folks at home will also see the questions that I'm asking. And for both the introductions and the questions, I'll give folks 2 minutes, and I'll flip a coin to see who goes first. So first is just 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and I'm going to have Brad go first.
Good evening, and Stacy, thank you, and the ACLU very much for hosting this forum. My name is Fred Keeley. I've lived in the Santa Cruz community since 1977. For 24 years, I was an elected county supervisor, elected county treasurer, and elected state legislator. When I was in the state legislature, I served on a number of committees, including the Public Safety Committee, which gave me an opportunity to delve rather deeply into criminal justice and civil liberties issues that are associated with that. Since leaving the legislature, because we have term limits in California, I've been teaching in the graduate program of public administration at San Jose State and at the Panetta Institute, where I teach a Santa Clara Law School class with Secretary Panetta entitled Achieving Consensus in a Partisan Environment. I also helped co-found Housing Santa Cruz County, which put an affordable housing bond on the ballot a couple of years ago and has provided what I think is a good path forward on how we could address affordable housing in Santa Cruz, as well as the brick and mortar side of the response to homelessness. I'm also on the founding board of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and our job is to continue to aggressively protect our coast and ocean off of the coast of Santa Cruz County. I also am on the board of Working Partnerships USA, which is a labor think tank and social activism organization that is based in Santa Clara County, but does work all over California. And we are extremely committed to issues around childhood health and family wellness. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Okay, and Joy, 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joy Schendeldecker, and I also thank you for hosting. I know you've had a long day teaching kids that are around the same age as my kids. They're not easy. So I've learned a lot from our local ACLU chapter in the last few years, as well as the regional, the people working with the regional ACLU about civil rights, including care courts, disability rights, the rights of people that don't have housing. And that adds to some things that are important for me. Well, those things are all important to me as well, but including, civil rights, like our voting rights, one of our most fundamental civil rights, which I think extends to campaign finance reform and limiting PAC activities, and as well the civil right to a free abortion on demand without apology, the right to all people with uteruses to choose whether or not to carry a pregnancy, and ultimately that we need universal reproductive health care. So that's just to highlight some of the things that I have in common with ACLU's work, and how much I appreciate and learn from what the organization does.
Great, thanks. I'm gonna take a doggy pause. Somebody needs me to open the door for her. I'm coming. If only I could train her to open the door herself. Wouldn't that be ideal? Okay. So we're going to move on to the first question. I'm going to drop it in the chat for everybody to see. And so the question is, while the SCPD claims to be underfunded and short-staffed, community members regularly observe multiple cars and officers handling what appear to be simple, non-threatening situations, like a houseless person sleeping on a bench or being accused of shoplifting. How would you respond to efforts to a careful review of the SCPD's budget to ensure the public that SCPD is efficiently using its existing personnel? And I'm going to flip my coin. And it's going to be Joy who goes first. So Joy, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Interestingly enough, I had my own recent experience with a kind of minor call to the police that resulted in 6 cop cars and 9 police showing up to my mayoral launch party. And while they did do a good job of de-escalating, that was, I think, an extraordinary response to have 6 cars and 9 police officers show up to a very minor call, which was actually totally unfounded, but that's another story. So that's just to say that I've witnessed it happening with people, yes, who live outside. And it has happened quite recently at an event that I was at. And, you know, in 2022, our police get 31.2% of our general operating budget. That's an enormous piece of our budget. And the policing that happens in our town tends to be complaint-driven policing. The police show up when they're called, when there's a complaint. And I don't think that we have good data available to us as citizens to know whether those calls require the kind of staffing and response that they get. So I 100% think that we need more oversight and accountability. We need a people's budget that reflects the real needs of the community. And we need a reinvestment in community programs, our social safety net, and things like childcare that have been defunded consistently for decades, including most recently in the last round of city county funding of what they're calling the core funding programs.
Great, that's time. All right, Fred, over to you. I'll read the question again. 2 minutes to answer this question. While the SCPD claims to be underfunded and short-staffed, community members regularly observe multiple cars and officers handling what appear to be simple, non-threatening situations, like a houseless person sleeping on a bench or being accused of shoplifting. How would you respond to efforts to careful review of the SCPD's budget to ensure the public the SCPD is efficiently using its existing personnel?
I think that virtually Santa Cruz is not very different than most cities our size in terms of the budget. The public safety budget between police and fire takes up an enormous amount of discretionary general fund money. And as a consequence of that, with that allocation or those appropriations into those two entities, it carries with it a large responsibility, both on the part of the city council, which authorizes the budget, as well as the receiving departments. I think that at least my experience is both on the Board of Supervisors and as a state legislator who served on the budget committee, is that the budget process is an exceptionally good opportunity for casting transparency and daylight on every department, not the least of which are our public safety departments, which we rely on in very significant ways. So I think that the budget process is a way to get to these issues, because what we know is that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so holding accountability in all departments with regard to the general fund appropriations that are made to them is a very important annual activity. And as someone who teaches public budgeting in the graduate program of public administration at San Jose State, I understand public budgeting in depth and in detail. And I think that that would be a major benefit when the city is reviewing the police department's budget and any other department. Last comment is, I do think that it makes good sense to look at both at the city and in any other law enforcement, local government law enforcement entity, how it is you can have dual responses in appropriate situations. Some calls are purely law enforcement. Some calls are purely mental health. Many calls are a combination of those two, which makes good sense in terms of dual dispatching.
Okay, question 2 is also 2 minutes. I'm going to put it in the chat for everybody to see. So pretty similar to the question asked of Justin and Shebra. What are your views on protecting the rights of unhoused people and ensuring that they are not penalized for engaging in the necessary functions of living or sleeping outside, at least, sorry about that typo, at least until there are enough shelter beds and safe parking spaces for all unhoused people. Specifically, what will you do to prevent enforcement of the temporary outdoor living ordinance and the oversized vehicle ordinance, at least until there are enough shelter beds and safe parking spaces for all unhoused people? Okay, got my coin. And I'm gonna start with Joy. 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll start at the end of the question. I would do everything in my power to repeal CSSO and OVO once in office. In fact, I am one of the appellants in the Coastal Commission appeal by Santa Cruz Cares, one of 11 appellants, and it's an incredible document, and I'm very proud of the work we've done with Santa Cruz Cares and the community to fight this criminalizing ordinance that is absolutely unnecessary. We can provide services, we should provide services without any new laws on the book. We have plenty of laws. So I'll say that, you know, this, for me, this comes out of my mutual aid work with Democratic Socialists of America and a group that I co-founded called Sanitation for the People, as well as Santa Cruz Cares. We need services, not sweeps. And people who do not have housing are primarily without housing because of economic reasons. The vast majority of people, I consider them internally displaced economic refugees. And it is not their fault that they're living on the street, and they should not be neglected. They need, for example, one example of neglect is that we do not have people without housing written into our city or county emergency response plans. Criminal neglect. That is absolutely indefensible, that a frontline community that is largely made up of people who are vulnerable, kids who have aged out of the foster care system, elders, people with disabilities, people who have been injured on the job and cannot work. Yes, they need to have protections in every way, including emergency response plans. And yes, let's get rid of OVO and CSSO as fast as possible.
Okay, so the question again.
I think I've got it.
You got it? Okay, so for Fred, question 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is a compound, complex issue. If it was easy, it would have been solved. It is a compound, complex issue. And one of the reasons I know that is because when the mayor and the city council put together the Council Advisory Committee on Homelessness, which had appointees by each council member and the mayor, as well as folks who were experiencing homelessness. And the very first sentence I uttered as the convener of that at the direction of the mayor and city council was, stay focused on the following concept. We are looking at issues of behavior, not status. If you focus on status from a criminal justice point of view, what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with the kind of situation we've got now. The right thing to do is to deal with behavior, and status is over here. The Council Advisory Commission on Homelessness, which I was the convener, which is to say the presiding officer without a vote, helping the body get its work done, came up with some very thoughtful and some not very helpful, but mostly some very thoughtful recommendations on how it is we can, in the city of Santa Cruz, do what cities are supposed to do, not what counties do. Counties are subdivisions of the state. They provide health and human services. Cities build things. And what this city should be building is shelter, navigation center, and permanent supportive housing. That's what the city should be primarily focused on. Counties deliver health and human services as their primary function. I'm not saying the city shouldn't do any, but the primary job here in terms of services is at the county. The good news is that the city and the county have aligned themselves, I think, very largely to doing the job that they are designed in the government code to be able to do. Last thing I want to say very quickly is, at some point, I hope we return to the concept of the Boise decision and its effect on what cities and counties can and should be doing, and where they have something other than what they should be doing. It's an important concept because it regulates from a court point of view what it is we do and how we do it.
Great. Okay. So last question. 2 minutes for this one. What should be done to provide more transparency of the SCPD's internal investigations and handling of external complaints? In your opinion, would establishment of a civilian police oversight commission that is adequately staffed and with the power to fire the police chief and discipline rank and file officers be effective in making these decisions and providing transparency on these issues? I'm going to drop that in the chat for folks at home. And okay, and I'm going to start with Fred this time. So Fred, 2 minutes.
Very good. Thank you. This question has a lot packed into it, a lot of concepts packed into it. So I'm going to try to see if I can get through some of these in order. First of all, with regard to SCPD's issues around transparency and investigations and complaints, the city of Santa Cruz has had for a number of years an independent police auditor, and that is largely their function. And I think that that function works quite well in the city of Santa Cruz. I do think that it is not a good idea to have an appointed body which has the power to fire the police chief or discipline rank and file officers. I think that's a huge mistake. I think what it leads to is, if you can do that, then you can appoint a commission that can review public works and fire public works director and fire public works employees. I think it's a big mistake to go down that path. I think that the right path is to hold officers and the police chief accountable. And we have ways to do that under the existing law with the independent auditor. Independent is the key word in that. It's an independent auditor, but that auditor provides findings to the city manager and to the city council. The city manager is the one who hires and fires police chief. The police chief is the one that hires and fires police officers. I think having the city council having an independent body that is not elected have the power to fire the police chief or to fire police officers is a terrible move in the wrong direction and is not going to help us increase the relationship between the community and the police, which I believe largely in the city of Santa Cruz is quite a positive relationship.
Okay. Question 3 for Joy. What should be done to provide more transparency of the SCPD's internal investigations and handling of external complaints? In your opinion, would establishment of a civilian police oversight commission that is adequately staffed and with the power to fire the police chief and discipline rank and file officers be effective in making these decisions and providing transparency on the issue?
Yeah. So who polices the police? Police officers are not regular employees. They have, and their union is not a regular union. So we, I think, need to come up with ways to increase not just transparency and oversight and accountability, but having that have teeth. Because what we've seen in the wake of the George Floyd murder and calls by, well, before George Floyd, honestly, since like 2014, 15, Black Lives Matter and other police reform and abolitionist advocates have been calling for reforms. And in the wake of George Floyd, we thought that we were going to really get some. And largely, they've been watered down and toothless and not very effective at reining in the power of police unions or holding officers accountable. So I do support more citizen oversight. I think that it's important. I think also in the wake of AB 481, where SCPD, other municipal police departments have to declare their military grade equipment. And I appreciate that SCPD is declaring all of their equipment. We have a little opening of more transparency, and the independent auditor also, we have a little window, and we need to crack that open wider so that we can really say, look, we do not need an arsenal of chemical weapons. We do not need a sound bomb that can, these are tools of war that are indiscriminate and injurious and do not increase justice or public safety to the vast majority or really any of our community. There are other ways that we have safety. There are lots of other ways for us to have safety with collective care, community care, and non-police emergency response, which is something that I've been involved with for many years. I've been involved with groups that advocate for non-police emergency response. It's not a new idea. Thank you.
Great. So just like with the District 3 supervisorial race, I will give everybody a chance to, drop their links to their websites and contact information and stuff like that in the chat. And then, like I said, I think that they only go to me, but I'm happy to then share them out to everybody. And then once we have done that, sort of a minute to plug your campaign, let people know how to get involved. And so I'll give both of you a minute. And come on, girls. Okay, and let's see. I'm gonna start with Joy. 1 minute for plugging your campaign and final remarks.
All right, well, the Joy for Santa Cruz campaign is grassroots. It's 100% volunteer and funded entirely by small donors. It is not funded by any developers, real estate interests, law firms, or other people. It's just regular people. So we are mobilizing, we're canvassing, we are going to events, and we would love to have people join us to that for walking and knocking on doors. Or if you're not up for that, there's other things that we would love to have more collaboration on. It's really a campaign for the regular people. And our tagline is justice in all things, housing, jobs, and environment. And that's something that we really, we believe in our words, and we put that into action. Thanks.
Great. And for people who maybe will be watching the recording and not necessarily seeing the live chat, can you also say out loud your website or contact information?
Sure. My website is www.joyforsantacruz.com. That's FOR, not the number 4, joyforsantacruz.com. And my email and phone number and social media stuff is all on there.
And Fred, over to you.
Thank you. KeeleyForMayor.com is the answer to that question. Two other issues real quickly. I want to mention that I know ACLU is very concerned about civil liberties, including a woman's right to choose. And I'm very proud to have served on the board of Planned Parenthood Marmonte for several years and to have their endorsement in this race for mayor. I also want to mention that voting is so critical. And one of the items that I engaged in terms of reform is that a few years ago, myself and others got together and we got a ballot measure to change the state constitution in California to create a citizens independent redistricting commission. The importance of that is that prior to that, for 150 years in California, the legislature drew the new lines for themselves and for Congress and the Board of Equalization. In other words, elected officials selecting their voters. We changed that, and the change has had the effect of making the legislature look like California. Many more persons of color, many more women, and that is a significant change that should be followed by other states and by other jurisdictions when they go about the business of redistricting. Stacy, thank you very much. Joy, it is always a pleasure to be in these meetings with you. Thank you.
Great. And so that concludes our forum here. We will be posting a recording of this, as well as I said at the very beginning of the meeting, responses that were written in because people were not able to attend since it is Yom Kippur evening. And so it'll be recorded, and then there'll be some follow-up sort of written documents. And I'm going to stop recording and then